Okay, so I would just like start at the top. Patreon, and then like maybe even give examples of how this is already working. So Patreon would be something like Neosphere. I don't know how many people are doing this in WebXR space. Probably at least a few that I don't know about. But just basically, yeah, Patreon. Sign up for Patreon. I'm making open source or whatever, or closed source, and it's really cool. And pay me. And surprisingly, people do come forward. I found. GitHub Sponsors is like another version of that that's more geared towards open source. I'm one of the people that's on there. There's grants. Once again, I guess this would be like stuff that we've already went through. Like there are grants available and we've gotten some. VC investments we haven't, but they are available. They've been offered to us. Event tickets, Jin, by Karam, and like a whole bunch of other people. MCCVR have done basically paid events in WebXR, mostly using hubs, but also sometimes Janus. It really depends on like the kind of fidelity experience that you're going for. But yeah, basically gate entry based on do you have the ticket, and maybe like Discord plays a role in that. There's also like just having the Discord community with paid roles in general, where the community isn't necessarily focused around an event, but it's just a community that does a whole bunch of different stuff. Like maybe there's some events, maybe there's some art shows, maybe there's product launches, maybe there's like panels, and then based on whether the roles they're in Discord that you're paying for, then you get access to these things. Virtual market stalls, things like vKit, but maybe done in web space where it's accessible to more people. So just basically like I've made a whole bunch of content, whether it's like 3D stuff, it's immersive video, it's pretty much anything, and I make a stall and I display what I've made, and maybe I'm actually at the stall and like talking to people and saying, hey, buy my stuff. Through one of these other means, or maybe I'm just a creator promoting myself and I have a YouTube channel or a Twitch stream or something. Avatar stores, things like crypto avatars, things like Wolf 3D, not really an avatar store, but just like basically places that you can get yourself an avatar if you need one. I think that's something that's increasingly happening. I see 2 Wolf 3D avatars in here, and one custom made, and then one made by Mozilla. Then Jin made his own, and then I'm a ugly default. But yeah, everybody needs an avatar. I'm actually the oddball out here that didn't feel like I needed one, so I feel left out. Furry avatar Taylor, the furry community is like big on avatars here. Yeah. And there's so much like contracting happening between like furry artists and people who want avatars and who aren't artists. Huge market, and I'm surprised it's not talked about more.
Probably because the furries are gay, so they're not taken academically seriously.
I think that's going to change. Because you can't ignore like a passionate community that's like doing something that they believe in. That's why like I specifically called out furries here, because I think it's like one of the most enthusiastic community.
Also, they have a lot more need for tailors because of the varied body shapes. So just going with sliders is not quite good enough.
Yep, exactly. Virtual land parcels, Decentraland crypto voxels. Well, not Decentraland because that's not WebXR, but hopefully maybe one day Somnium space as well. Just basically you're using crypto to sell slices of land and people invest in it. Yeah, Twitch streaming with bits. I've done that. Some people wanted me to continue. I just haven't had time. Engine licensing like Wonderland Engine. Yeah, app stores like either Construct Arcade or some of the stuff that Vesta has tried, which might actually work now. Yeah, basically just like you're creating apps and the access is based on have you paid for this app, and then maybe the store takes a cut. In-world advertisement, that could be like I make, for example, Hubs rooms, except the trick is that inside the Hubs room, there is like an ad space, and that's how I pay for my work on this stuff. It doesn't need to be Hubs rooms. It could be literally anything else. And the web is absolutely perfect for that. I guess it depends on whether people want ads in their VR yet. Yeah, payment processing. That's more like how do you grease the wheels for like money to actually move around, because it's still surprisingly hard to do that in VR. A lot of people have kind of paved the way, like Karam with VRTO, with 5Rs, MCCVR, people that are just basically using Discord and just like basically the web in order to accept payments for these kinds of things. And I think when nobody even wants to be doing that, I think there's space for a company whose only purpose would be to take payments for these kinds of events. And they probably take a cut for that. I think there's people that would pay for it. Virtual actors is just basically pretty much any time that you want to demo a project that you've made that's maybe like a VR project, or maybe it's a model, maybe it's a world, maybe it's an avatar, or maybe you just like want an audience to record some sort of show type thing that you're doing. Yeah, virtual actors, people that just basically put on a headset and their job is to basically act out whatever it is that needs to be acted out. Like, oh, can you like spin around this avatar so I can like film you? Show off some of the features.
Experiments with immersive theater using VR with actors and stuff.
Yep, and this also goes towards AR as well. There's people that are using like the iPhone AR features to put like celebrities into the real world, like basically Travis Scott, but in the New York City skyline or something. All of this could be running on WebXR. It's actually a really good use case for it. Yeah, YouTube shows with ads, basically you just have YouTube as the way that you monetize whatever the content is, whether it's like a panel or whether it's like an archive of like stuff like this that we're talking about. And then like you just gain ad revenue from that. Podcast sponsors, where you have just like a regular industry roundup of like, here's what's happening in the space. You do the curation, then you report on it, and then you talk about stuff on the podcast. And there's plenty of pretty much anybody who's doing any one of these other business models would probably want to boost it by sponsoring a podcast. So like that's one avenue. A panel is another thing. It's more for like I guess brands that want to break through into the space. So like you'd have a panel of like industry experts, and then the way that everybody's paid for their time is that basically some bigger brand comes in and says, hey, I want to get into the whole WebXR space or whatever it is. It seems hot. So I will sponsor your panel discussion, and then we'll just put up your logo somewhere. Yeah, virtual conference experiences. This is like replacements for all the things that COVID destroyed. Huge space. And yeah,
definitely an audience.
Cool. Cloud hosting, that's Hub's cloud. Basically, you make some sort of software and then you charge people for the hosting of it. World design contracts, you need a hub space or whatever, and you just pay somebody to make you something to spec. In-world vending machines hasn't been explored nearly enough, I think. Basically, whatever you're selling could just be something that's like in a vending machine at one of these events. And it could be like something really small, kind of like tying into like Patreon, GitHub sponsors, grants, and like some of the other crypto stuff where basically there's an artist who's presenting at one of these events, and then there's a vending machine next to them. They're like, oh, well, I'm selling like this avatar, or I'm selling this model, or I'm selling this art piece. Sweet. Yeah, and I can totally see this kind of like playing into like memetics on like social media, like back when like you had Game of Thrones, then everybody was like making Game of Thrones like fan art and stuff. It's a really cool way to. But yeah, basically, vending machines are like a really easy way to like integrate some of this stuff into a world that makes sense. Initial coin land offering, I'm not really a fan of this stuff, but it's worked out well for a lot of other people. Like for example, Somnium Space, where they just basically say, here, we've created a world and we're selling the space in it. And by the way, they are WebXR soon, so that actually probably does count as WebXR monetization. Asset porting, just basically you have some sort of asset, you want to move it into a different world. I've paid for people to do that, and I'm sure that tons of other people still have that need. Where basically just things aren't compatible enough, so you just get somebody who's an expert in either Unity or Unreal or Hubs or whatever, or Blender, and then you just get them to port the assets for you. It's already happening. Tokenized assets minting. So basically, if you want to get into the whole crypto scene and like start trading things among crypto folks, like on OpenSea, or trade something for land, or trade different assets that you've made with for like Ethereum, and then like maybe integrate that with Rarible somehow. Yeah, just basically being able to take the concept of an asset or a thing that you've made and tokenize it. And that process is called minting for people who don't know in crypto. But the point is that by providing like a minting platform for one of these things, you can actually charge a fee for doing that. Tokenized apps themselves. This is something that I'm going to be exploring in later this year and into 2021. I have like 100 different WebXR applications that I'd love to share with the world, but I never have because there was no way to monetize them. And I think tokenization could actually be a really virtual, yeah, they're just basically VR experiences. Yeah, that as well. We're like a quarter way through. I can speed it up. And integrations would be like just having matrix chat that's integrated with hubs, 2D meeting rooms. That would be like something like making hubs compatible with 2D desktop people, and then just charging for like meeting rooms. Some people are doing that. It's not necessarily WebXR, but could be compatible with WebXR. Brand presence in virtual worlds. People in Somnium are doing that. Political campaigning. I haven't seen this in WebXR yet, but like the Biden campaign did like sponsor a world in Fortnite. So I mean, who knows? Virtual sex design. Sorry, go ahead.
Also, he did a map in Animal Crossing as well.
Yep, perfect. Virtual sex design, I guess, like whatever makes sexy avatars.
Yes, there's lots of that going on with furries as well.
Yeah, virtual sex work where somebody embodies the avatars. I've even heard some interesting stuff with like loneliness chats on like Fiverr, where like there's people who you can hire on Fiverr to have like VR chats with you. Game coaching, like, oh, here's how you play Fortnite better or something. Fitness, where basically you just have apps that are like Beat Saber or like Beat Saber clones or like one of those things where you just basically need a web browser and you can have a fitness application in your room. Teaching development, like basically, I think some of the people in Unreal space have been doing this, where they were using hubs to teach Unreal development, virtual raves. Yep. Mm-hmm. Virtual raves, that's like you just go to a party on Friday night instead of going out because of COVID. This is mostly happening in VR chat, but I can totally see that expanding. And you just basically pay at the door or something. Face scanning, Wolf 3D is doing that. Full body scanning, I don't know if Wolf 3D is doing that, but a whole bunch of other people are already, and I don't know if it's made it into WebXR, but I hope it does. Location scanning, basically like scanning locations, putting them up. There's different companies that are doing that. I don't know if they're heavily integrated into WebXR yet, but when you scan a location, you can easily put it into like a hubs room or something. Product visualization, basically you're selling a product, your brand with a physical product, and you want people to be able to buy it and experience it in a way. Sorry, go ahead.
Microchip just asked. So the list and the chat is in the Discord. Whatever you're writing here is also in the Discord. So if you are looking for what we are talking, you can look at the Discord.
So product visualization would be like your brand, like say you're Apple and you're selling some new hardware, but like because of COVID's still not over. You want people to be able to try the iPhone or like experience it. Like I've seen this happening inside of virtual market, like on the Japanese side, where they're like hardware manufacturers are literally putting their hardware into VR, just so people can try it before they buy it. And web is probably like the best way of doing that, because right now this category outside of like XR is totally owned by web. You could totally see that happening. Like if somebody came out with a really good product visualizer, then just WebXR would take over that whole category. Then I guess real estate visualization. Matterport has been doing this since forever. They've been using VR to like map out home spaces. Yeah, absolutely. Virtual real estate development as well. People who have virtual land and they want to improve it, kind of like improve it and flip it and sell it to somebody else. Just people that are basically modelers that come in, modelers and designers that design parcels to a certain specification in a certain location in a virtual world. And then once it's done, you can make a big deal out of it and say like, hey, by the way, we're launching like a new thing.
I remember since Second Life.
Yep, it's everywhere. Industry news coverage. This is basically get Kent buy into WebXR more. Audio design. A lot of these things are still like missing audio. I think it's a hugely unexplored space still. Like I know Jin sometimes experiments with like putting in a boombox into like some of these worlds, but like a lot of these worlds can be made a lot better by just having like good audio, like good music. And yeah, it could unlock like the connection to like the entire like audio production industry and musicians. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Industry research reports, I would consider Jin to be like part of this category. I think he's excellent at doing it, and I would love to pay him for like some of the reports that he's doing. You can sell stuff on itch.io, um, which is like more traditional like game dev type stuff, but yep. Yep. And then one extension of that could be like loot boxes and other traditional gaming mechanics for your game. Except done in WebXR. Avatar clothing. By this I mean not necessarily avatars, but like add-ons that you add to your avatars, whether that's like wearables or like jackets that conform to your avatar, or who knows. Digital paintings. And this is basically the whole crypto art in one thing. Digital sculptures. This is 3D crypto art. Motion capture performance. We were talking about that earlier. Model store, Sketchfab, basically. They have WebXR support, and I'm sure several people have that as their main job through a platform like Sketchfab. Virtual performance event contracts. I know a few people that are doing that, where basically there's some sort of event that was canceled, and you need to put on a virtual version of it. That's going to be happening for a while, and a lot of it has already happened in WebXR, and I think that's going to continue. Model optimization. If your model sucks and it's not good for web, I've paid people to optimize some models. That could be a job in itself. Discord bots.
Mhm.
Yep.
Knowing that also kind of could fit in the same spot as asset porting as part of to bring the asset over to the program is making it not an optimized mess.
Discord bots, basically integrations into things like hubs, integrations into things like Matrix. Like you could just basically have a package solution that does all of that and then just charge a subscription. B2B contracts. There's a lot of like miscellaneous stuff that's happening in the background that probably doesn't even fit into this category, but like there's a lot of interesting just B2B stuff happening in the background. All you really have to do is talk to people and ask like, what are you doing? What do you need? Here's what I do. I've seen tons of really cool partnerships formed that way. A newsletter, so like charging for access to some industry wrap up. There's some people that are doing it in, like for example, crypto space and many other spaces. I'd love to see more in like WebXR. Yeah, and basically translate any idea from Japan. That's another catch-all. But like, if you look at the Japanese VR communities, they have like 100 more ideas that you could probably pick off in an hour off of Twitter. And if you took any one of them and translated it for the US market, you'd have something completely innovative. They're super far ahead. Virtual assistants, yeah, basically, this is kind of like piggybacking off of the Japan idea, where like some of the ways that you might want to interact in these virtual worlds is like with an NPC, and then you could just use like text to speech. You can yeah, make it like part of the world experience where you're just like interacting with virtual avatar. There's overlay apps with things like Metachromium, for example, where there's some sort of game that's happening, but maybe you want a certain feed on your wrist, or yeah, there's or like maybe you want to wear a different avatar, or maybe you want to composite something for like a virtual production. Yeah, there's a lot of like different categories of just like overlaying on top of other software. And VTubers are like another example of that, where you have an avatar that's kind of on the side. Yeah, there's a perfect example with Rain. Playing basically a mod for Super Mario 64 with VRM avatar on the side. And that phenomenon is called VTubing, which I was surprised that actually Google is even starting to talk about VTubers. I saw that in one of their blog posts. Anyway, VTuber software, you can sell home spaces. As this stuff gets more and more popular, a lot of people want their own home spaces in addition to like having avatars. So there's another example of that. People, once again, from the Japanese community selling a comfy virtual home and making money doing so. And all of this is like a perfect fit for the web since it's all super compatible. It's basically just GLTFs and stuff. Yeah, virtual studio productions. So I'm just hiring a team that does the whole production thing for your event. If you're the kind of person that is not going to set it up yourself, which is 99.9% of people. Yep, that's an excellent example. Moonbox and Jin are pioneers in the space. Meeting rooms. So this is just like the infinite office type stuff. Some of the stuff that we're doing in Hubs. And the way that you'd monetize that, like there's many different ways. Like for example, Hubs is doing the whole Hubs cloud thing. But you can imagine this being like a pay-per-use type thing as well. Product launch production for COVID. So a bunch of people, and by product launch, I mean not necessarily like physical products, but also like artist products. Like there's people that have launched albums in web experiences. I'm not sure if they've been WebXR yet, but like for example, Porter Robinson has like launched albums with like virtual experiences. Virtual film festival that would be like 5 hours done by Karam and VRTO and a whole bunch of other really cool people. Basically you have a film festival and you do it in WebXR. Model lights baking. Surprisingly, this is something that could probably be an industry in itself. There's a lot of difficulty in just like getting things to look right in different platforms. So just baking the lights is something that I heard people would pay somebody to do for them. WebRTC infrastructure, basically setting
I
up.
think it's only temporary, as you know, more frameworks are going into this field. So, you know, once the heavy frameworks will be in the field, so they already have, in one of the tools is baking light. So I think that it will disappear in a few years.
Hopefully. It's kind of like a problem that nobody wants to exist. But yeah, WebRTC infrastructure would be just like backends for some of the stuff. Everybody's using WebRTC. Like we're using WebRTC, Hubs is using WebRTC, Somnium Space is using WebRTC, CryptoVoxels is using WebRTC, Decentraland is using WebRTC. I don't know about VRChat, but I would not be surprised if it's a flavor of WebRTC. And guess what? Discord. Okay, well, guess what? Discord also is WebRTC. So like all of this stuff can work together. If somebody just wanted to sell WebRTC infrastructure, they probably could. Digital game items. This is once again a traditional game monetization tactic where you just get extra stuff that you can buy on a piece by piece basis. Content archives. Like let's say we make content like this and we make it accessible only to people who are like sponsors of the project. So you can kind of like go through the archives and see the previous stuff that we've done. Digital comics, this is what Super Medium is doing right now. And also it's one of the main focuses of virtual market in Japan, where you're just basically selling people's comic books in VR. It's actually a pretty good experience. Like if you're into comics, that's probably one of the best ways to like actually interact with them. It's really hard to actually look up there because the thing is in the way. So I have to, okay. Virtual offices. Yeah, virtual offices, this would just be yeah, replicating like a lot of the tools that people are used to, except putting them into like a more social context. So you can have meetings, you can have whiteboard meetings, you can have screen shares, things like that, with all the social cues that involves, like being able to look around, who's doing what, and get that context. Memory palaces are also something that I think are really underrated. A lot of people use them. So that's
There's
just
sort of ending up a memory palace at the moment with all the pictures on the side.
yeah, exactly. So I guess this would even be an example of that. Virtual Burning Man, that already happened. I'm not sure how much of it happened in WebXR.
It was, I think, mostly alt space VR, but that could easily have just been hubs
Yeah,
in a bit more funding.
yeah, and there's people that would just people who want to participate in Burning Man could just as easily be paying infrastructure costs for doing that in WebXR. Architecture modeling, this is just like you're an architect of whatever, or maybe you're an interior designer and you want to show people what you do, what your ideas are. Data visualization, huge market with a lot of use cases. Once you add a third dimension to data, it's a lot easier to show things. And I know a few companies in that space. Virtual restaurant, this is something that we've been tossing around. Basically, coming from the idea that the whole point of a restaurant is not to feed you, but it's to have a social gathering and an excuse to do so. Just that concept alone, I think, is something we'd like to explore. Virtual dating, meeting people. And this is actually something that more than one person has asked me to make. Just basically they're lonely and they just want to like try virtual dating and they're comfortable with doing that.
Yeah,
Virtual,
a couple
yeah.
of folks have got married after mostly hanging out in social VR, so that's definitely happening.
Celebrity meets. So basically I think a lot of celebrities are not the kind of people that would want to like literally go out and physically meet people, especially like in crazy times like this. I'm not sure how much it's happened outside of things like when Travis Scott production or something, but like you can imagine like celebrity meets happening inside of these virtual worlds, and you pay the celebrity. There's stuff like a Cameo, which could plug into this. Technical presentations, so just like basically drawing stuff, explaining stuff. We do this all the time in hubs, like diagramming. Yeah, artist promotion. So like I've made some stuff. I'm showing it off to people. Here's my art. Kind of goes into hand in hand with like art galleries and producing like collections of art. Product catalogs. Again, that one might be a duplicate, but basically like showing people the products that you make, which aren't necessarily virtual products, but you want to show them off and you want to be able to get people to experience them in some sense before they buy them when they can't actually go to the physical store. Hubs fork for bespoke businesses. I know some people that are doing this, where basically they're taking hubs and then they're packaging it for a certain niche, whether that's musicians or malls that no longer have like a place of business. Scale hubs. A lot of people just want a version of hubs that can hold more people, and I've heard at least a few people at some of these companies that are just working on literally that problem. Virtual bouncer, somebody who can kind of like moderate discussions at one of these events. It kind of takes a certain skill set to be able to do it and a certain amount of experience. And I think this is also super undervalued, that events with like a bouncer and events without a bouncer work totally differently. One devolves into chaos and one like you can actually continue to have a reasonable discussion. Without this, go ahead.
One of the reasons the virtual furry convention went well was because of the ticket that sort of act as the bouncer, keep all the trolls out. Like one of the folks who was giving a panel went to a different virtual furry con where they just made a public instance and it just didn't work in the slightest because too much troll chaos.
Yep. Virtual tour guide is kind of similar to that. It's like somebody who's familiar with the space and can kind of like introduce people into what's happening, where to go, what to do, how things work. Horizon is actually doing this. This is one of their key features, but I think it totally works in WebXR as well. And yeah, and I'm sure Horizon is paying all their tour guides. VR schooling, once again, this is something that I wish would explode 100 times more, because I've talked to a lot of kids that are just basically not getting schooled at all at this point. They're all on Zoom, and they hate it. And then I asked them, like always, like, do you feel like you're learning at all? And then they just say no. So like being somebody who like made an actual VR schooling platform that, I don't know, could just use hubs, could probably like take over the education market at this point. VR babysitting. Go ahead.
A lot of sort of teachers are playing around with using hubs at the moment.
It's great. I wish there was more. VR babysitting, I don't know if that's yet going to be a thing. It's kind of like one of my crazy ideas, but I can totally imagine that yeah, in like COVID times, like you would actually want a babysitter while you're actually at home, and it could just be somebody in VR so that you can actually get work done.
It's the bouncer idea, except, you know,
a bouncer for kids. And then maybe like you get a notification on your phone if like there's any sort of problem or like there was a disconnect. I'd be interested in seeing somebody try that, because I'm sure there's millions of parents that are looking for solutions to some of these problems. Live tutorials, basically like a Q&A with an expert, kind of feeds into the Twitch idea, but this would be more interactive, where just like you can be face to face with like somebody who's like an expert in the industry. You can ask them, oh, hey, how do I do this? And then they can show you, either visually with drawing it, or like maybe with a screen share, or
not paid, but today I was helping someone with fixing their avatar just using lots of Gizmos or GIFs.
Yep. Events organization. So just basically a package solution for, hey, I need to run an event, handle everything for me, please. And of course you charge for that. Events technical support. So while the event is actually happening, you need somebody who's actually versed in the technology to be able to fix issues. A virtual greeter kind of is also similar to the virtual tour guide. It's just like somebody who knows where things are, and just like gets you started in the virtual world. In like a much larger scale event where everything's chaotic, I think that becomes increasingly more important. Virtual world analytics, like basically being able to track people across like all these instances of virtual worlds. This would be more of like a B2B thing, but yeah, people just basically paying for understanding like what's happening, like, oh, these people can't connect, or I should invest in this virtual world, or have you heard of this thing happening inside of this virtual world? Also digital brand and artist merchandise. So just like basically sponsoring some of these things by selling virtual merchandise. Again, we were talking about doing some of this stuff with M3. Social media promotion, basically taking this stuff and making it friendly for social media. Things like this that Rainwolf did. It's not necessarily VR, but just like people who can actually compose these things together and do like SEO. And also just like machinima, like new art forms where the whole art form unfolds inside of a virtual world that wasn't necessarily designed for doing a virtual production, but with VR, pretty much anything can be a performance. And yeah, those are 100 ideas for monetizing.